What's up? I'm Bea and welcome to my channel where we debunk harmful personal development and religious norms. A few weeks ago I had mentioned in a video that Bethany and Kristen from Girl Defined have a devotional out. It's a 60-day devotional and the reviews are very interesting, so I said let me know if you want me to take a look at it. And a lot of people said yeah, we need to know what's going on there. So I've been reading it for the past few days and there's so many things, so many things that I want to address. So it's going to take me a while to really kind of flesh this video out, or however many videos I'm going to make about it. But in the meantime, there was something that I wanted to address. In day 8, the devotional is written from the perspective of Kristen, and she's talking about how she's asking her parents for help overcoming sin. And she says, as a teen, this secret sin had been plaguing me for some time. My sexual desires and the things I did to satisfy my own lustful passions were hurting me spiritually. That much was obvious, but tell my parents. Really? And she keeps going on. I'm not going to get into it because, again, this will be in the other video. But she goes on to talk about how she went to her parents, how she asked for help, how they prayed, and how she ended up overcoming this sexual sin. Initially, I was like, I would like to know. I mean, I'm assuming she's pleasuring herself, but I don't know all the details. I would contend that that is not sinful, just in my opinion and in the opinion of other religious and spiritual women that I have spoken to. None of us are on that page where it's like, oh, that's not okay. So take that for what you will. But at the end of the actual devotional section, before it gets to the part where they have you read more in the Bible and answer some questions, there's a footnote adapted from Kristen Clark, How to Deal with Secret Sexual Sin, and then it gives a link to a blog post from them. After that it says, and if you want to learn more about how to battle sexual sin specifically, check out our book, Sex, Purity, and the Longings of a Girl's Heart. So I said, okay, great. Maybe Kristen's going to give us more information in her blog post. I went to the website, boom, it's about self-pleasuring and how that had become a regular habit in her life and how she wanted to stop, but she didn't know how. And then she says, I was at a conference and heard the speaker talk about the powerful act of bringing secret sins into the light. And so that's why she decides to bring it to her parents, and they overcame it by pursuing genuine repentance, bringing secret sins into light, seeking ongoing discipleship from a godly woman, and making radical changes. Really don't like this. I mean, masturbation, I keep wanting to say that because that's how I would say it in real life, but I don't want this to get like flagged or demonetized. I feel like that's a very natural human thing to do. Really, I don't know how helpful this is. I think it just gives more shame to people. I think it could be different if you were talking about maybe being unfaithful to a partner, or maybe you were looking at images that you know you shouldn't be looking at. And we've talked about this before. I'm very much sex work is work. I will not judge, shame, or belittle anyone for engaging in it. However, I do not consume it. And that is because of my beliefs. And so for me, if you have this moral value that is content you don't consume, and yet you're finding yourself feeling tempted and struggling with it, and so you feel like you're betraying yourself in that way, or you're in a marriage and you've both agreed that you will not consume that kind of content, and one of you is struggling with it and that's causing a problem, those are things where I think this might be useful. You know, pursue genuine repentance, go to the person that you've hurt, or address it with yourself and say, hey, I'm not going to feel shame about this. Everybody struggles with stuff. It's okay. I need to make sure I'm honoring myself more in the future, though. And again, I don't want this to sound like I'm judging anybody or putting anybody down who consumes it or helps create it. That is a value that I have in a way that I respect my own values and my husband. That's just my opinion and my perspective. And of course, as long as you are not hurting yourself or anybody else, you do you. That is where I will always come from. So I do think that these could be helpful, you know, pursue genuine repentance, bring secret sins into light, seek ongoing discipleship from a godly woman. That could just be having like an accountability partner, somebody to check in on you. Say that you're flirting outside of your relationship. I would consider that a bad thing to do. And so if you have somebody who's like, hey, you being good, you know, have you texted this person, or did you block them? Are they still blocked? Like, somebody to check on you and make sure that you are meeting your own standards and the standards that you've placed in your life as a result of your religion, and then making changes. So that could be deleting the app that you met the person on, or the app that you were using to message them, or again, blocking their phone number, if we're going with that example, because I really just don't think masturbation or self-pleasure is worth all the shame that they're putting on it. Regardless of that, I guess we've addressed it now, so I could have just let it slide by, so that probably won't be in the video about Girl Defined. But after looking through this, I was wondering what other topics they have on their blog, because I know a lot of their blog posts are just their videos reposted, but I found one, a written one, that spoke to me and slapped me in the face, and I need to talk about it. Let's read this together. A popular way to lose your respect as a girl. I was at our local grocery store the other day in the checkout aisle when I saw her. I had never seen anything this disturbing in my grocery store before. There she was, right in front of my eyes, without a shirt on. I'm not exaggerating here. Thankfully, she was wearing jeans, but she was shirtless. I glanced back and forth to see if anybody standing around me was as shocked as I was. Not a blink. Nobody seemed to care a bit. Frustration began to well up inside of me. Why would a family-friendly grocery store allow this shirtless woman to parade herself down the checkout aisle? There are little children and unsuspecting fathers being exposed to her nakedness. I read that and I was like, okay. Can't say I've ever seen a shirtless woman in a grocery store. Not sure if that's legal or illegal, because that would be something to, like, oh, if she's breaking the law, maybe we should be concerned about that. But then I'm also thinking about the double standard of men being allowed to go shirtless and women not. Like, okay, this is kind of interesting. That would catch my attention if I was at a grocery store. But also, little children don't inherently view bodies as sexual, so let's not be concerned about that. And if they're breastfed, they've probably seen them before, so not sure why that's a huge deal. Unsuspecting fathers, because men are this is full-on sarcasm. Men are fragile little things that we must protect from our bodies, or else we will cause them to sin. So how dare she be naked? Right? So, like, these are just thoughts going through my head. I finally made it out of the store and was shaken up, to say the least. Where has our dignity gone as females? I thought to myself. As shocking as it was for me to see a topless woman in my grocery store, I am grateful for two things. 1, she was on a magazine cover and not there in person. 2, she was using her arm to partially cover her nakedness. So what? You could tell she wasn't wearing a shirt, but she was covering the majority of her chest, I'm assuming, and you could see some cleavage, maybe some underboob. Are you that concerned about another person's body that shakes you up? You're so concerned about policing the way other people present themselves and how much skin they do or don't show that this caused you to freak out in a grocery store checkout line? This really just seems like an extreme reaction, because what's the difference between that and, I'm sure you've seen magazine covers where girls are in, like, bikinis, or you've seen Victoria's Secret, their big old posters that they have in the mall. This should not be a shocking thing to her as somebody who lives in Western culture, who lives in the world. But here's where it gets bad. Ever since that day, I've been thinking more and more about the whole idea of women's respect. As 21st century girls, we verbally demand respect from the people around us, and we get mad if we're not valued as dignified human beings. We want other people to treat us with such high respect, and yet we don't even respect ourselves. The level of dress or undress that you have does not define the level of respect that you deserve in any way, shape, or form. And if you think that it does, you better be telling men the exact same thing, or else you are a hypocrite conforming to a double standard. The fact that a woman is on a magazine cover with a shirt off covering her nipples does not mean that she doesn't deserve respect. This is disgusting. This is internalized misogyny to me. The fact that she would be so judgmental of a woman of a model on a magazine cover doing a job. And I've never heard them talk about men being shirtless at the beach. Is it because she has boobs? That's why it's so different? No. The way that you dress or do not dress has nothing to do with the level of respect that you deserve. You deserve basic human respect as a human being. Basic respect. is a right. You do not get to say, well, she deserves to be disrespected because look at what she's wearing. That's disgusting to me, that you would even think like that. That you would look at another human being that God created with such judgment and place shame on them because of the fact that she was a model on a magazine cover. Isn't she one of God's creations? Isn't she loved the exact same by God as you are? But you're going to judge her and shame her. And I get it. I'm being judgmental, but it's more about her ideas, not about her worth as a human being. The sexual liberation movement. Thanks to the sexual liberation movement, we are now taught that girl power is the freedom to show off all our skin. We're finally liberated from the bonds of modesty and free to sexually flaunt ourselves in any way we want, says our culture. It used to be that Playboy and pornographic websites were looked upon with shame by women all across the world. It was considered a huge disgrace that girls were flaunting their bare bodies for men to lust after. Fast forward a few years and many of these companies have women filling their CEO position. Good for them! You're gonna make money off of women's bodies? I'll take a cut. Good for them! From famous celebrities down to the average girl on the street, Americans have almost completely lost the value and self-respect that modesty brings. As Mary Cassian points out, nowadays there's little difference between the appearance of a prostitute and the appearance of what the world upholds as a sexy, attractive woman. A lot of thoughts there. If you find value in modesty, that is incredible. That's good for you. That makes you feel empowered. That makes you feel strong. Amazing. If you feel empowered and strong and beautiful when you're not being modest, great. Good for you. Who cares? I think we have this view that if you have too much cleavage out, oh, well, then you should expect to be assaulted or you should expect to be harassed. When it's like, I'm just dressing this way because I like it and I feel good in this, and we should expect that other adults around us have enough self-control and impulse control to maybe, there's nothing wrong with looking at somebody and thinking, wow, you look really good, or wow, that person's really beautiful, and admiring the way that they look, if they're dressed in a sexy way or a modest way. But then that should be it, right? You shouldn't be ogling somebody, because people get assaulted in sweatpants all the time. People get assaulted when they're not dressed provocatively in any way, shape, or form. So it's really not about the clothes. It's not about the way that you dress. It's about self-control and the culture that allows people to get away with assaulting others. Also, just love that little jab at sex workers, as if Jesus didn't hang out with and stand up for them in the Bible. In all fairness, I guess I shouldn't be misleading and say that Jesus was like, yeah, sex work, go for it, get them, girl. But the fact that he had dinner with prostitutes and he hung out with them and he cared for them and loved them without condemning them. I'm so defeated right now. I'm so upset. Our culture teaches us that if you want, this is disgusting to me. The more we uncover, the more we lose. You're really going to say that a woman's worth is based on the amount of clothing she has on her body? That's all women are to you? That's the only value they have? Is if they're covered up? How can you look at another human being and say you've lost value because of what you're wearing? Our culture teaches us that if you want to be hot, show what you've got. Their worldview tells us that nakedness should be publicly embraced and we shouldn't be ashamed of it. They promise us loftily messages with their sexual liberation message, but what they fail to mention is the fine print. God created people to live in nakedness, and we're the ones who messed it up, who gave it all this shame and all these arbitrary rules about it, but okay. The very thing most girls and women want is to be valued and respected, but sadly that is the very thing we're throwing away. By exposing our most intimate body parts for anyone to see, we're training the world to view us as objects instead of dignified humans. When we sell our nakedness on the front of magazines, we are training men and women to view us as an item to be purchased. The more we uncover our bodies, the more we throw away our dignity. When we don't value and protect our own nakedness, we are unconsciously training men to do the same. When we expose our most intimate body parts for the general public to see, we cheapen their value. A treasure is only a treasure because it's valuable and rare. And I want to go back real quickly to earlier when I said that I don't consume adult entertainment, and I want to point out that it has absolutely nothing to do with nakedness. Nothing at all. If somebody wants to be naked, that's great. If I see somebody who's naked, I'm not going to shrivel up and die. That's not it. And I don't think that anybody's value as a human being is lessened by how many people have seen them naked in any way, shape, or form. And this is infuriating to me. When we don't value and protect our own nakedness, we are unconsciously training men to do the same. A treasure is only called a treasure because it's valuable and rare. Your body, your soul, your spirit, who you are, does not lose value by how many people have seen you naked. It doesn't. It really doesn't. And this is so toxic. This goes back to purity culture in its rawest form. You know, you can't get a booger out of a napkin. You can't unchew a piece of bubble gum. Once you've had sex, you're dirty. You're done. You're gross. That is what purity culture teaches us, and that is not okay. That is a recipe for women struggling to find value in themselves, struggling to stand up for themselves and what is right, and to demand the respect that they deserve. None of this is okay. God created girls to be beautiful. Yep, God created everybody to be beautiful because we were all created in His image. One thing I want to make very clear here is that our female beauty and sexuality is not the enemy here. In fact, one of the most beautiful things about being a girl is that God designed us to be just that, beautiful. In the Bible, women were created to be companions, not to be beautiful, but okay. So women were created to be beautiful. Women were created to be sex objects, but only under your specific terms, right? That's what you're saying here. This reminds me of something that my grandpa told me when I was a sophomore in college, I believe. I don't remember what we were talking about or how the conversation came up, but he just told me, always remember that God made Eve out of Adam's rib, not out of his foot. And that has stuck with me for a very long time. That means that there should be no power imbalance between men and women. And I know that this is a very heteronormative conversation. Please bear with me. One gender was not made to be beneath the other. They weren't made to have separate rules. It was meant to be companions, people who help each other. So to say that women are created to be beautiful, they're just created to be looked at and enjoyed and to have sex with, but oh, if you do it with the wrong person or you don't do it under the rules that we've put out there, you're less valuable, despite being used for your intended purpose. It doesn't make sense to me. Our sinful world has taken what God designed to be sacred and precious and turned it into something common and cheap. You're not cheap if you've had sex with 100 guys. You're not cheap if you've been assaulted. You're not cheap if you waited until you were married to have sex and then got divorced and are now married to somebody else, or not married at all and you have sex with somebody else. You're not cheap. God has actually given us girls the ability and desire to be sexually alluring and enticing to the opposite gender and to the same gender. However, this allure isn't for any man out there. He created us this way for the purpose of captivating one guy, our husband. One guy, our husband. Okay. So, what do you say to women who are divorced? Are they bad? Because they captivated that one guy who was their husband, but now there's, if they get remarried, there's another guy. And in your eyes, they would be doing it correctly, right? If they got married and then they had sex, but now that's two guys. That's not one guy. So how do we deal with that? How do we handle that? Proverbs 5:19b is talking to husbands about their wives and says, "May you always be captivated by her love." This can also be translated to say, "May you always be intoxicated, exhilarated, and ravished by her love." Would love more context on that, but yeah, sure. You and your partner, may you guys always find each other hot. Love it. Save all your sexual allure for one man. God is the creator of sexual allure, and he had a specific purpose for how it should be used. I'm not going to read the rest of the article or the blog post. I'll link it down below if you're interested, but it's a lot of the same, and I'm going to have a lot of the same talking points. So for the sake of this not being a super repetitive video, I'm going to go ahead and cut it short, but I want to address just this one part right here. Dana Gresh says, God's intended purpose for you as a carefully crafted masterpiece is to intoxicate one man with the fullest extent of your beauty. That's the bullseye. When you dress immodestly, you create arousal in many men. That is missing the mark. I am not responsible for another man's arousal. Nobody is. If they're aroused, they're going to be aroused no matter what you look like, no matter what you're wearing. You're not going to put that onus on me or anybody else that I know. You are not responsible for how other people feel, for the arousal of other people, because again, it's going to happen no matter what you look like. You cannot control that. I think there's a conversation to be had where if you are only dressing with the hopes of attracting the sexual desires of a man, when is that okay? When is it going too far? You know, are you doing it because you think it's fun and you like it, or are you doing it to get self-validation? And is there maybe something internally that you need to make sure you're good on? Because again, I don't think there's anything wrong with dressing like sexy or trying to be attractive to other people, but I do always want to make sure that it's coming from a place of like, this is something fun that I enjoy, and not from a place of insecurity where you feel like you need outside validation to feel better about yourself. But again, that's not a judgment, that's just a conversation that I think is interesting. And then the last part that I'll read is, your sexual allure is a gift from God for the purpose of totally intoxicating your future husband. When you wear immodest clothes and arouse any guy passing by, you are using your sexual allure in an ungodly way. Again, your future husband. What if you get divorced? I'm sure they would look down on divorce, but there are plenty of valid reasons for it. Even if you're somebody who's not like a huge fan of divorce, or it makes you really sad, I think you can say, yeah, there's lots of reasons for divorcing somebody, and we shouldn't judge people for that, number one. Number two, when you wear immodest clothes and arouse any guy passing by, they are responsible for themselves. Let's think about it like this. If you are a heterosexual woman, let me know down below if you've dated a guy like this, where it seems like no matter what, he's always commenting on the way that other women look, or he's always looking at other women, or he makes you feel inadequate because he compares you to other women, or he's staring, he gawks, you see somebody walk by in a crop top and it catches him and he follows her down the alley. Not the alley, but like if you're at a restaurant outside and she's walking by, his eyes are trained on her and going. Let me know if you've ever dated a guy like that. Also, let me know if you've ever dated a guy who has made comments about, oh, that woman is really beautiful, or I think that she looks really nice. And you look and he points it out to you and you say, wow, yeah, she is really pretty. Or you see somebody on TV and he says, oh my gosh, wow, she looks great. I remember having a crush on her as a little kid. She's still so beautiful. And you say, wow, yeah, she is. And that's the end of the conversation, where you can look at somebody, you can notice their beauty and you appreciate it, but you're not fixated on it. So let me know if you've ever dated a guy like either one. Because I can tell you, I've dated both. And I'm married to the one who appreciates the beauty of women, but doesn't fetishize them or obsess over them or stare them down or make me feel like I am any less beautiful because there's another beautiful woman in the room. I don't like the narrative that men are so weak and they need to be protected from your boobs, because I know for a fact that there are men in the world who aren't scumbags who think that the way you're dressing is an invitation to harass you. And really, we should be setting the bar higher for men and not judging women and taking value away from them because of how they dress. But with all that being said, I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know your thoughts on this entire conversation down below. I'm disappointed, and I feel like all my videos end like that, where I'm like, I'm just disappointed. So it's probably an emotion that I should get used to having. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below, and while you're doing that, if you would consider liking this video or subscribing to my channel, that would be incredible. And if you have subscribed already, thank you so much. I am so appreciative of you, and I love being able to just sit here, hang out with you, and talk about whatever. With all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Thank you so much for watching. Please be kind to people, and I will see you in the next one.